Alright, I think we're live, man. Alright, what's up, everybody, man? Hello, back. This is my Patreon live stream for September 5th, 2019, week 12 of my Patreon. I'm gonna start counting this shit. I really will, because I kind of want to, people to know which week it is and everything. And I'm so glad to have you back. Really, I was just chatting with some people from my Patreon, and it feels good to know that people are watching me. I remember like fucking months ago when I was streaming, I had nobody watching me. So, even if it's 2-3 people, man, I still appreciate you. I just wanted to let you know. And I got a lot of things to talk about. I wrote them down. It's a new artwork that I'm going to be talking about. And the things that I'm going to be talking to. And it's so funny because actually DJ mentioned Discord, and I actually have some news about that. So I'm going to be talking about some news that I have. I'm going to talk about my process for this artwork that I'm going to be posting tonight. It's still not finished, but I kind of wanted to talk about, my process and everything. Then I'm going to be doing some critiques. I have Mirage, I have Lucia, I have some notes written down I wanted to mention. Then I'm going to be talking about how to break down the face, talk about Darren's work. And then I'm going to be doing, hopefully there's going to be time, because there's never enough time, because God knows I love to talk about, I don't even know what I talk about. If there's time, I'm going to be doing an overpaint over Joshua's work. Beautiful work, by the way. He spent 2 hours on this, and let's get started. Yeah. So first of all, Discord. So yeah, I don't really know anything about Discord, but I guess it's like really popular. So I had somebody on Instagram write me that he set up a server or something, and he told me that the server is ready, and he made me an admin and all that. So I think next week I'm gonna give you the details, and you can gather there, and I'm gonna be there like commenting and shit. And there's gonna be like a special section to for you for the Patreon people, so you can gather there and like exchange works, and I don't know, send each other nude pics or whatever you want to do. So that's gonna be coming soon. And also, I have a new Patreon student. I wanted to say shout out to Sharon O'Donnell, however you pronounce that, man. I'm super fucking excited. I have 4 students right now. Actually 5. I always forget it. 5 students right now, man. I really appreciate you, and I want to give you the best content possible, man. So if you have any questions about anything, write me in the chat on YouTube. I'm gonna be answering questions. God knows I get distracted way too easily, so please be patient if I take some time. But here you go though. DJ says here for you always, Angel. Forget those 2 months I was slacking on watching you live. No, it's totally cool. I don't think it was even on Patreon. I was kind of like doing some shit on Facebook and stuff. And yeah. Thank you so much, Mirage, man. It really, like, I just want to say it's so exciting, because I'm finally seeing something happen with my Patreon, and the YouTube is kind of going. So this is just the beginning, guys, man. I'm really excited. So thank you. Goddamn, I'm too excited now. So thank you for being a part of my journey. So let's get started with this artwork that I have for today. So first of all, I generally shoot for 2 artworks every week, and I almost always do that. But actually this weekend I was over at a vacation with my pops, so I have only 1 artwork this week, and it's this. But I wanted to make sure that it's gonna have some crazy colors and all that shit, because crazy colors get a lot of likes. And this is kind of like the reference I use. It's from Sensual. I don't know if you can see that, Senvi1 Sensual. So it's a pretty fucking good reference. Actually, I edited it a little bit. I always find out however good the reference is, I always can kind of like tweak some things. And I think a couple of the things I did is always push the vibrance of the reference. And I've talked about this before, guys. Like, before you start working with a reference, especially if it's something from like Pinterest or something, and it's some random reference, you can actually go in and edit it with like Photoshop, and kind of like bring down the highlights or bring up the shadows, whatever it is. A great trick that I always do is I always bring up, if you go, let me show you how to do this, by the way, because I don't know if I've talked about this recently. But a major mistake that people do a lot is this is a great reference, by the way, here with the male, and I want to show you. I think I've showed this before, but I'm gonna show you real fast because it's a great trick. So if you go in Photoshop, you go right here, filter, and then you have camera roll filter. So you go to camera roll filter, and then you go here to shadows, and then when you bump up the shadows, you can see how much more detail there is in the hair, and not only in the hair but the eyes, pretty much everywhere. And the reason for that is that a good photo is not necessarily gonna be a good painting. So usually photographers are shooting for kind of like this high contrast, dark shadows kind of look to make it look more, you know, kind of mystique. Is that the word? Mystique. You know, they're trying to give you off a vibe. But when they do that, there's actually not enough detail for you to look at and actually paint. So a great thing you can do is you can actually always bump up the shadows. I usually bring down the highlights or the whites depending on which artwork it is, reference. And in this one, look at what happens if you bring down the highlights, by the way. If you bring down the highlights, you can actually see a lot more detail, which is kind of weird to think because what happens in a photograph, there's usually too much dark in the shadows and there's too much light in the in the lights, so you actually end up with this kind of mediocre piece and you don't really see the planes. You know, I always talk about planes, and the reason why you always draw everything flat is because you don't see enough of that. So I recommend you go in and actually experiment with that, and you know, look what happens if you draw the highlights, bump up the blacks a little bit, or maybe bump them down, I don't know. You know, it kind of really depends on the on the reference, so I can't really give you any general advice, but the one thing I know is definitely the shadows. So bumping up the shadows is always gonna help. So this is kind of like the before and after, you know, just like literally 1 minute editing of a reference, and it's gonna give you such a better painting. So that's kind of like what I always do before I start working with a reference. I'm not gonna save it though, fuck that. So that's pretty much what I did for this reference because it was way too dark into the shadows. It kind of looks way too dark now, but before that the shadows were literally black. And you know, when they're black, you can really, you know, add that, you know, some of that detail into the shadows. But I was thinking, I don't want them to be so light that, you know, you can see everything in her body. Like I kind of like the concept of you know, kind of smudging everything in here so your focus can be kind of more into the light, you know. So I kind of kept a little bit of that darkness, but I still bumped it up. And something that I really like about this artwork that I've done before with this other artwork, let me show you. It actually got a lot of likes, and y'all know I'm a like addict, so you know, whatever gets me likes, I'm gonna do it again. And this artwork actually got a lot of likes, and I really like the lighting. You know, I've talked about it on Patreon live stream. And I think one of the reasons is because it has so many different colors, the color combinations become kind of crazy, you know. And I've talked about it before, how important it is, you know, when you have two colors, you know, when you have, for example, the pink skin and then you have cyan color, it's really important to actually draw that blue in. You know, you can actually, if I zoom in, you can see how much blue there is. You know, it's not you just painting pink and then you have cyan, because actually that's gonna produce a lot of muddy colors, you know. And it's the same with the yellow. You know, if I've showed you the process of this, but I start out with the pink, I start out with the yellow, but then in the middle I actually draw a lot of orange and a lot of red. You know, it's not you just taking the yellow and the pink and trying to merge it. You know, that's why I always say I don't really blend. You know, I just add more paint on top. You know, I don't use the old tool that much, the color picker. You know, I'm mostly just picking paint from the color sliders. So I kind of wanted to give off the same effect with this artwork, with this reference. And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do kind of like the signs and everything, but I really like the combination of all the colors. And a couple of things I wanted to mention before I get to the process is just to notice, first of all, before you even start, notice how much gradient there is in the face. So if you look at the face, oh, Mirage actually says, for me, this one is one of my favorites. I really hope you're going to sell this for a print. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I can actually release that. I'm just a little scared that because it's so close to the, you know, to the original photograph, you know, somebody can sue me or something. But you know, I'm gonna think about that. So first of all, before we even get to the painting alone, I really like to analyze the reference by myself just to know what I'm looking for. So if you look at the face, look how on the top it's so red that it almost is kind of pinkish, you know. It has some purplish vibes, and it's really important for you to know that, because I feel a lot of people, if they're drawing for so many colors, they're gonna fall into the trap of thinking, okay, that's black, so I'm gonna paint it black. That's red, I'm gonna paint it red. And then there's green, so I'm gonna paint it green. But what you don't realize is that if there's 5 colors in the artwork, you really have to be drawing 10 colors. And if there's 10 colors, you need to be drawing 20 colors. You know how many colors, how many ever colors there are in a photograph. You need to be using more colors, you know, just to produce the same feeling that a photograph has. So if your photograph is only like reddish and yellowish, you really need to be using oranges, pinks, and almost like so much yellow that it becomes almost green, right? And I know it sounds crazy, but I don't mean like actually green, but just a little bit so it becomes alive. So what a lot of people don't realize, when you're working from a reference like that, you know, they're like, oh my god, there's so many colors, you know, like red, green, and blue, so I'm gonna be adding those. But they don't realize, when there's complementary colors there's always gonna be all of the colors from the sliders. So even though you're not gonna be seeing purple that much in this painting, you really need to be using it, because what happens when you mix red and blue, it becomes purple. So a lot of the background, a lot of these transitions, especially right here in the face, you can see how I've added that purple in here, but I'm gonna talk about it later. It's really important for you to show that, so actually the transition can become as smooth as possible, you know. And it's the same with the green. Like if you add red and then you add green, let me show you what's gonna happen. You're just gonna, especially with a dark background like that, you have the green, you have the red, then you add the green, you know, and you try to blend those. Look what's gonna happen. That's a mushy ass brown color, right? So that's why it's so important for you to actually utilize all of the oranges, all of the yellows, and you can kind of see how in that gradient, even though it looks kind of like this smudgy color, there's actually a lot of oranges and yellows. So that's what I'm gonna be talking about. Let's see though. DJ says self-portrait when? Actually, I did a self-portrait I think a couple of months ago, but I'm not really a fan of self-portraits, because I feel like I'm so in love with myself that I cannot produce such a great self-portrait. Like I always feel like it kind of sucks, because I'm like, nah, I'm prettier than that. Yeah. Oh, okay. I have this person who I can't pronounce his name though. I think it's Korean. I don't know what language this is, the username. How to positioning the face, the eyes and nose and mouth, all these things. That's a great question. It kind of depends on which style you're working with. So if you're working in more of a style, in more of a painterly style with this, it's more about you. Let me show you. It's more about you just kind of breaking down the face and then putting in the features. But if you're talking more about a sketch style, let me show you how to position the features. So pretty much the answer to how to position the features is always going to be structure. And I've talked about this. It's really important for you to be using the Andrew Loomis method. So if you don't know what that is, there's this guy Andrew Loomis. He wrote a lot of great books. You really need to read them. And Andrew Loomis. So what he says is that when you're drawing the head, you shouldn't be like, oh, there's an eye here, there's an eye here, there's a nose, and there's a mouth. You know, that's how kids draw portraits. You know, you're always gonna end up with wrong proportions. How real artists draw portraits, they don't start with the features. They actually start out with breaking the head down. So when I'm first starting out, you know, you're gonna see my process images on Patreon. I never start out with the features. I always start out with the head itself, you know. So I start out with the head, and then I break it down into planes, right? So I pretty much start out with the bow, then I add the jawline, I add this circle, which is pretty much, if you look at the head, it's not squarish, right? So it actually has the sides chopped off. So I chop off the side, I add this place right here, which is for the eyes. then there's the nose kind of going in here, and there's the mouth, and it kind of goes like that, and there's the forehead, and there's the hair in here, and there's the ear, and then there's the neck, right? So I pretty much have the whole head, and I don't have a single eye, mouth, nose, none of that. Well, I guess I kind of have the nose, but it's really the whole structure. It's not the nostrils or none of that, right? So you really need to have that before you get into the features. Dude, can you write me how to pronounce your names though? I know I had an Asian patron, but I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry, man, but I really appreciate you though. So I hope that helps. You know, it's all about you putting in the structure first, and then kind of getting in. And by the way, I'm not even gonna add the features on top of that. Like, I'm not even gonna be like, okay, there's the structure, so here are the eyes. You know, I'm actually gonna break it down even more. So how you break down even more is actually you start drawing the planes themselves. You're not drawing the symbol of an eye. You're not drawing an eye like that. You're actually drawing the plane of an eye. So actually, if you have the bow in here, you're actually gonna have this, which is like a plane. You know, I'm not thinking about how to draw the eye. I'm thinking about how to draw the planes of an eye, you know? And then the eyebrow, and then there's the eyelid on top. And then for the mouth, you know, it actually goes in like that, right? There's gonna be the corner here. There's gonna be the top lip and the bottom lip. But again, I'm not thinking how to draw a simple mouth. I'm thinking about how is the mouth being on top of the structure. You know, if you picture this whole head in 3D, you know, how is this mouth gonna stay on top, right? So I hope that helps. Mirage says, I always struggle to draw the head from different position, so this breakdown is very helpful. Oh, I'm so glad, baby. You can actually go in, I always talk about this, go in and search for planes of the head. That's super helpful. So if you go in for the planes of the head, this is there's way too many though, and I don't advise you to go in and add some foreign ones because they might be mistaken, but this is the original that you want. So this is the original, I think it's by, I don't remember his name, I think it's something with J. But these are the three main ones. So what you want to do to really break down a head and learn how to draw, especially from imagination, download Andrew Loomis' book, which is Drawing the Head and Hands. Read that, you know, try to do all the sketches in that, and then download the planes of the head and try to break down every single head, you know. And by the way, since we're on the subject, because I actually wrote it down for later to talk about it, but I might as well mention it now. Break down, explain plus Darren's work. So this is something that I always tell my students. You know, this is pretty much the first thing that we talk about when you sign up for my mentorship. Is kind of like how to break down the hair, and I mean the head, not the hair. And I give you some, you know, the exercise with breaking down the references, and then just doing the sketch with the reference on the side. But something I feel like a lot of people don't understand is actually how to break it down. You know, they don't feel like, they don't really understand that, and I wanted to kind of explain that. Mirage says, oh, cool, thank you, boo. I'm always working with this poser app on the iPad. Very helpful for dynamic poses. Thank you, Angel. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, that's a great idea for like the body, but for the face especially, I feel like this was really gonna help you, the planes of the head, because it really shows you where everything is. You know, it really shows you, like, again, let me show you. Like, it shows you, look at how beautifully breaking down the cheekbone is. You know, if you've always wondered, like, if you're a beginner and you're drawing cheekbones, most beginners just pretty much draw one brush stroke and that's it for the cheekbone. But look at how many planes there are. You know, you can actually break down a lot of that. So how do you actually break down a reference and into planes? Because I've talked with one of my students, Darren, and he's getting better with breaking it down, and he was asking me, bro, is that okay? You know, is that good for a breakdown? And that's a pretty good breakdown. But one thing I would advise you, already say thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Mirage. So one thing I would advise you when you first get the reference, so this is pretty much the exercise, right? You download a great reference, you make sure that it has a good angle, good lighting, all of that, great structure, and you lower the opacity, and you do what's called rhythm lines. So if you look at Andrew Loomis' book, rhythm lines is pretty much you finding out where all the proportions are gonna be. So that's, you know, what I showed you with the circles, kind of the eyeballs. You know, it's really simple, and it's not that much about structure as it is more about proportion. You know, because the first thing that you really need to understand about the head is proportion, and then you have structure, and then you have anatomy, then you have lighting, then you have all these things. But really, the two most important things are proportion and structure. But if you directly go into the planes like that, you're actually going to confuse yourself, because that's a great breakdown that we have right here, but you can't really do that by yourself. You know, the whole idea of this exercise is for you to learn how to draw. Let me show you. Is for you to learn how to draw a head by yourself, right? So if you're actually drawing a head by yourself, you're not gonna start out with breaking down the proportions, like with breaking down the planes like that. You know, you actually need to start out with something, and the thing that you start out with is this. It's what's called rhythm lines. So the first thing when you get the reference is actually do the rhythm lines, and then you go in and you break it down into planes. So that's one thing that Darren skipped, and it's probably my fault because, you know, I'm still kind of new at teaching, and I still forget some things. So really break down the reference itself first. So you have the reference, you do the rhythm lines, and by the way, you don't have to be using a different color. It's actually even better for you to be using the same color, because I want you to be thinking about these two things as one. You know, it's still the head, but the reason why I use two colors is because I wanted to show you the difference between, you know, the rhythm lines and the structure. But when you're doing it by yourself, I actually want you to think about these two things as if it's, you know, it's how you draw the head, you know. So that download a good reference, do the rhythm lines, and then on top do the structure, and then keep the reference on the side and actually try to do it freehand. So you're looking at the reference, and you're looking at this reference, and you're trying to do it, but actually hide the planes, you know, hide the planes and only leave the original reference. And then after you're done with the breakdown, look at your own breakdown, and then look at the reference breakdown. So you compare, you know, let's say you do it freehand, you know, you're like, you do that, you do all this stuff, and then pull out the original painting that you did on top of the reference, and look at what you did differently, right? So maybe you forgot this plane right here with the cheek. You know, for example, what Darren did is he didn't really break down the cheekbone. Like, see how the cheekbone is just one big plane? And actually that's the way it is for girls, because girls don't really have those kind of harder cheekbones, you know. But it's still important for you to actually show that there's a plane change there, right? So keep those two together and see what mistakes you did, and then you can actually judge yourself. You know, that's how you teach yourself how to paint, is you see what the reference says, and then you look at your own painting, and you're like, oh, okay, so I need to learn more about the eyes, because when I'm not looking at the planes, I actually forget about that, right? So I hope that helps. DJ says, can we do a book club stream one of these days? Okay, but what is that though? What is a book club stream? Are we gonna read the book together? I'm pretty bad at reading, by the way, if you don't know that about me. I really stutter, like I basically stutter while I talk. So if you look at me read over here, probably all of you are gonna leave. So probably not. But how about you all read Andrew Loomis, and then we can come in and we can discuss that. Actually, is that what a book stream is? I don't know. But that's a good idea though. So that's pretty much for breaking down the head. Why did I mention that? Why did we get? Oh yeah, because the one of my patrons asked it. Okay, so that's it for the breakdown. Let me see what's next on the list, because I forgot what I was talking about. Oh yeah, I was talking about the breakdown of this portrait, right? So here is the reference, and think about the gradients. That's what I was saying, is think about what gradients there are gonna be with color. So even though there's only like red, green, and blue, actually you need to include all of the colors. There's gonna be a lot more yellow, orange, purple, pink, a lot more than you think. So even though in my process I pretty much start out with the basic colors, later, you know, even here you can see how I started adding a lot of orange, and then you can see how kind of on the side I added some purple. You know, there's some purple in the background. You know, always be thinking about what are the mid colors that I'm not using. You know, don't get don't get, you know, close-minded and think that, oh, okay, I'm painting a red painting, so I'm gonna be using red. No, there's a lot of other colors that are gonna be around the red that you want to use, right? So if something is red, you need to be also using pink, and you also need to be using orange, you know. So if you paint, if your painting has two colors, let's say like red, and then you also have green, you really need to be using pink for the red, and then for the green you need to be using yellow and a little bit of cyan, and then for the red you also need to be using orange. So you're actually gonna have a lot more colors than it looks like, right? So pretty much as always with the messy painting technique, I started out with I don't know if you can see it because my screen is kind of dark, but I start out with a background. I start out with a messy brush, and you can kind of see how a lot of the colors are actually a lot more saturated than the reference. So in the reference, if you look, actually the background is going to be super desaturated. But what I do in my own work is actually I bump up a lot of the saturation, because when you're painting, you actually start smudging the colors, right? And a lot of the background is gonna be hidden behind those brush strokes. So you really need to have those brush strokes, you know, below your painting for it to fucking show through. By the way, I didn't get my water though. Let me go get my water, and I'm gonna be right back, man. Thank you so much for being with me. I'm gonna be back in a second. Okay, we're back. So after the background, I pretty much start out with laying the crazy colors. You know, this mess painting technique is all about you laying the craziest of colors and then kind of figuring out where everything is gonna be. DJ says stay hydrated. Yeah, man, I always get nervous, you know, if I'm not drinking water. I don't know what it is. So I start out with the crazy colors, and something to think about, because usually in the messy painting technique, I start out with a light background, and then I have the character kind of be darker than the background. Let me show you. And in here, you know, for example, I start out with this cyan, and then I'm adding the skin and the hair. And the difference in those techniques is when you have a light background and you're drawing with darker paint, you want some of the background to be showing through. But that's even more right when you're doing the opposite. So if you're drawing with a light color on top of dark background, you need to be leaving a lot of spaces for the background to show through, because otherwise you're not gonna have some of that structure, right? Because let me show you what happened. Where's the Photoshop? So let's say you have this kind of like dark brown. If you're painting with, let's say, orange, if you don't show any of those you know, any of those places from the background, later on when you're adding the shadows, you're gonna be needing to add, you know, all of these different shadows. And if you go in and you add the shadow with a normal brush, you're actually gonna lose a lot of that texture from the messy brush. And you know, the whole thing about the messy painting technique is for you to have some of that structure and roughness, right? And it's kind of a different thing in this artwork, because I started out with a light background, and then I worked myself with dark, and then I went back with light. Does that make any sense, man? This is way too complicated. I hope it makes some sense. Anyway, when you're working with light on black, make sure that you leave more spaces for the shadows, because you want some of that texture to be showing through. I hope that made some sense. So that's pretty much the first step, just kind of laying in the red, the green, and the blue. I'm trying to figure out exactly what type of saturation I want, exactly what hue I want, and I'm really trying to combine them. But as you can see, I'm not trying to blend them. You know, I'm just putting the color there so I know that the real color is gonna be there, and I don't have to, you know, go back and actually add more red. Like that red is already there all I need to do is go back and add a lot of more orange and add those transitions, you know. So that's pretty much what I do in this. In the next step is I go in and I add a lot of the orange. You can kind of see how I added some of that blue into the coat, you know. I added some of that red into the hair, and I'm basically trying to get closer each color to the next one without trying to blend it, because again, when you blend, you make everything muddy. That's one thing you need to get out of this whole stream. When you're blending, everything gets worse. So in the next step, I'm kind of switching to the brick brush, and you can kind of see how everything is getting a lot more muddier, you know, because I can't help it. But this is why you really need to figure out all the colors in this stage. You know, if you kind of close your eyes, you know, you can pretty much see how in this stage the colors are gonna be pretty much like in this one, right? Close your eyes for a second, and I mean, besides the fucking letters and shit, it's pretty much the same colors in the face, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is you're trying to figure out all of the colors, all of the transitions with the messy brush. So then when you go into the brick, you can actually go in and just render out the features and all that. But if you don't have the colors, when you go back with the brick brush, you're actually gonna make them muddier, right? So that's why you gotta figure it out with the messy brush. So that's pretty much for stage 3, and then I start adding the features. So you can kind of see how the features, even though they're super dark, I'm not using that dark color for the background, right? So you see the dark background color is kind of like this purplish, bluish color, and then the features, you know, the eyes are gonna have that same kind of dark. But you don't want to start out with a color, because it's gonna look super weird if you add that super dark color on top of the red. So we're trying to build up those shadows. So you can kind of see me how I'm using these dark browns and stuff, you know, and just really slowly trying to break down the whole face. You know, I start out with the eyebrows, the eyes, you know, I'm getting the nose, I'm trying to get the nose darker, the lips darker, and you need to be looking for some places, for some key places to lay down the painting. So if you actually look at the reference, there's some really key places that you can use, and you can see how I use those places to actually break down the artwork. So if you look at the eyes, look at the light that's hitting right here on the eyebrows, right? And then you have the same effect right here on the nose, and then you have it the same on the chin. So I'm using these places to pretty much break down, okay, the nose is gonna be there. So see how I broke down the nose, but I actually didn't add the detail, right? So there's no nostril. I didn't add the hard edge on the side. You know, you try to refrain from adding like the actual detail, but you're trying to break it down. So I'm trying to show that there's a nose there, but I'm not trying to paint the nose. Does that make sense? So I'm not going in with the nostril, I'm not going in with the wing, you know, for the eyes, I'm not going in with the reflection, none of that. But I'm still trying to paint an eye. So I'm actually just marking, you know, it's more like, okay, there's gonna be an eye right there, you know, I'm just almost like sketching it, but without the detail. So that's pretty much what this stage is about. And then the next one, it's more about just adding detail, but it's not really just adding this small detail where again it's reflection and none of that, but it's you pushing the structure even more. And that's one of the stages that's going to be super hard if you're like a beginner or an intermediate. So that's why I recommend you to do a lot of sketches, a lot of breakdowns, and actually do a lot of painting before you get into, you know, more of these messy painting techniques. So that's pretty much the stage that's going to be super hard for you to go from, and it's so funny because when you're working in the messy painting technique, you know, you actually have this first stage and you're like, oh my god, the colors are so great, and then you get into the next one and you're like, oh my god, this has so much potential, you know, because you're just kind of marking where everything is gonna be, and everything looks kind of good because your brain is actually like, oh my god, there's gonna be a beautiful eye right there. And then in the next stage, you try to draw that beautiful eye, but it turns out kind of shitty, and you're like, oh my god, this is not what I thought it was gonna look like, right? DJ says, is it me or does anyone else can't stop thinking she's holding a jewel? I don't know. Does she look like she's holding? Oh my god, how I actually made her her whole face too wide. Look at that reference. I don't know. Does she look like she's holding a jewel? I kind of like the. Yo, that would be kind of dope though, with the smoke of the jewel and everything. And that's a pretty good idea, man. How everybody has better ideas than me, and then I'm the only one that can paint them, but I don't have any fucking ideas. Can somebody explain me that, man? So yeah, so that stage is gonna be super hard for any beginner and intermediate. But if you actually push through that stage, actually everything from there is kind of like similar to the normal painting technique, which is you just kind of adding more detail, you know. And I'm going from big to small. You can kind of see how even in the hair, look how the hair pretty much in the beginning it was just one big blob, right? It was just this, and then I broke it down with brush strokes, like big brush strokes, and then smaller ones, and then in here, look at over here. Let me zoom in. Look at how from this it became this, you know. It's just smaller brush strokes, and then the next stage it's even smaller, right? So I'm going from super big brush strokes to smaller and smaller until I get actually to the you know, the little reflections and stuff. So, and then I actually my live streaming app crashed, and then there's in the video, if you watch the video, there's no footage of me actually adding the, you know, the signs. So I'm sorry for that, it just kind of crashed. But I promise you it's nothing really special, you know. I just pretty much just added some letters, and I was thinking about the perspective, right? So I was thinking about how are even though, you know, those are random letters, how is this perspective kind of going into the to the portrait, right? So actually the top row is you gonna be looking at it from below, right? So it's actually gonna go up, right? And then the middle one is actually gonna be more into the center, but it's still kind of going down a little bit, because the eye level, your eye level is at her eye level, right? Because, you know, that's how tall you are, pretty much like her. And then the letters are gonna be a little bit down, right? So they're gonna be pointing down a little bit, and then the bottom row is really down. And actually in the reference you can kind of see how it's even more extreme than that, but I didn't really like that effect because, you know, it kind of, I feel like it's a little bit too much, because it feels like the wall is actually coming up way too much towards you, you know. And I mean, you know, you can change that as a photographer, but as an artist, the beautiful thing is you can change things. So I kind of like the idea of the letters actually being, you know, not kind of like steeper. Is that the word? I don't want the words to be coming right towards you, right? DJ says, I'm learning accounting, so this can be the real deal. I'll be your manager. Yo, you can really be my manager and also be my general. So that's gonna be a mean fucking duo. My manager and my accountant, and my general. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So that's pretty much the stage that I'm at right now with artwork. I still have some renderings to do. I'll be doing it after the live stream, but I just kind of wanted to show you how I got to this stage. And then actually way further than the thing I showed you just now. Let me open it up. So the next stage after this, part 6, is actually, oh, I actually have it on my desktop. So after this stage, it pretty much start, you know, the part that I hate the most is quote unquote blending, you know. But you can kind of see how even though it's super subtle, you know, there's still a lot of a change, you know. I don't know if you can see it, but the eyes are a lot clearer, the nose is a lot clearer. And the thing about you know, if you're gonna be doing some blending on or rendering, you really need to do more with less, right? Don't be adding brush strokes just because you think that, you know, they're gonna make it better. Actually add brush strokes only if you know that it's gonna make it better, right? So you can kind of see how in the nose I just pretty much made everything a lot more clear, right? I didn't add anything in right here into the middle where I was just kind of blending the nose. I pretty much just went in with a hard edge right here on the top of the nose and on the wing, and I just made every edge just kind of harder and crisper, right? That's what real blending is about, just making everything clearer. So hopefully I'm gonna show you the final tonight on Patreon, and you can kind of see it for yourself, and then you can watch the video. So that's it for this artwork. I hope that was kind of useful. Mirage says, what canvas size and DPI do you use for your artworks? Oh, that's a good question. So usually I go for 3000 by 4000, and I have 300 resolution DPI. Oops, sorry about that. The DPI doesn't really matter. The DPI is only there if you want to actually print your artwork. But pretty much just leave it at 300 and don't think about it. Let me make these 300 though. So not 300, 3000. Oh my god. So I'll kind of have 3000 by 4000, but the problem is for Instagram you actually can't post 4000 by 3000 because it's way too long, right? So for if you want to post it on Instagram, it has to be either a square or anything from a square to 3000 by 3750, right? So actually that's the longest proportion that Instagram is gonna allow you. So pretty much I'm either using, let me write this down because I can't pronounce it. I'm either working by 3000 by 3500, or I'm working with 3000 by 3750. You can go above that, but I think my computer is strong enough now to handle it because my other one was a piece of shit. But you know, I think the lowest you can go to is 2000, and then the highest one, so your computer doesn't go berserk, is like 4 or 5000, right? But if you go above that, it doesn't really matter, and if you go below that, you know, you fucking, there's gonna be pixels. Yeah, you're welcome, Mirage. Happy to help. Anyway, this is it for this artwork. I hope that was useful. So let's move on. I have Mirage, actually the girl that's actually in the stream. So we're gonna be talking about her artworks. And I'm so happy, man. I'm so happy you guys actually go in and send me your artworks. I really want to help you, even though there's been 40 minutes and I still haven't done a single critique. But I'm sorry. I'm talking about other things as well, right? So this is Mirage artworks. First thing I wrote is great aesthetics. I really like how, you know, you kind of have a sense of the design, you know, like you can kind of see how you're thinking about, you know, you want to make the girls beautiful, right? It's not you just kind of painting a random painting. You actually want them to make them beautiful. So that's a great thing. I feel like if you work a little bit more on the structure and kind of like on the color and some other things that I'm gonna mention, I feel like it can get a lot better. So the first thing I wrote down is decide whether you want to work in black and white or you want to work in color, because your work right now looks kind of monochromatic, and it kind of goes back to what I said about this artwork. If your artwork is mainly in blue and red, you know, kind of like yours here, you're not gonna be using, actually it's more of a pink color. If it's pink and blue, you know, like in this, you're actually gonna be using a lot more depending on, you know, which side you go. So let me show you this. So if you have pink and blue, right, you have pink in here. We start out in the middle layer. So if you have pink on one side, and then you have DJ says, one day I'll give you mine, just trying to learn to transfer workspace from no screen Wacom tablet to Surface Studios. Oh, that's cool, man. I'm always here. Just send it to my email, angelganef6@gmail.com. So let me show you this. So if you have pink and blue, right, there's two ways to go about blending those colors. So the first one is you going through purple, which is kind of gonna be the more standard one because it's a shorter path, or you can actually go through yellow, green, and red, right, which is gonna be the longest, the longer path to these colors. But you gotta choose one, right? And in this one it's gonna be more kind of like the colors are gonna be more together, and in this one is gonna be a lot crazier. So if you're still a beginner, I would advise you to definitely go with a simpler one, and that's kind of like what you did in here. But the problem is, what you basically did, you had the blue in the background, you try to do the skin with pink. Actually, it's not even pink. See how desaturated that color is, right? So you try to do the pink, but you actually just blended it, and you got this middle muddy ass color that doesn't really has. Look how desaturated that is. That's pretty much just 20 points. That's nothing, right? I mean, I don't want to, by the way, every time I'm doing a critique, please don't feel bad. I feel like I'm such a horrible person that every time I do a critique, you know, I go really hard, you know, on the people. I like your artworks. I'm just trying to help. So take pretty much everything with a grain of salt, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, something that you can actually improve in your artworks. If you want to practice more on the structure, I would advise you to actually fully work in black and white. You know, that's what I have my students do. Joshua pretty much here. He has a lot more black and white studies, and we're actually going to be getting into color next week. But he pretty much just worked in black and white for 2 straight months before getting into any type of color, right? So that's one thing I advise you to do, because like right now your skin is pretty much black and white in here, like it's like 7 8 points, and even in here, you know, it's pretty much the same color. The thing about beautiful skin is that it's not just one color, you know. Even though skin, you know, you might think that skin is this color, skin is actually really, what's the word, translucent, I think that's the word, which basically means that when light hits it, it actually gathers a lot more color than anything else. You know, if you get your, you know, if you have plastic and light hits the plastic, you know, there's gonna be only two colors. But with skin, it's actually a lot more different. You know, there's because there's blood and then the skin is super thin. Actually, a lot of the blood is showing through. But that sounds way too scientific, though. What you have to remember is that when you're painting with skin, you actually need to be using a lot more color. But because that's super complicated, if you're still a beginner, you actually need to go back and learn how to paint with black and white. So that's the major critique I have for you, Mirage, is you're doing great with the style, you know, even your proportions are beautiful, you know. This girl, the proportions are great, the structure is very good. I was gonna say great, and then I noticed the nose, but pretty much you know, like 7 8 out of 10. But then you have the color, right? So either use either study color by itself, you know, like still lifes, what I have Joshua do. Just pick some random like fruits and stuff and just put it on the table and try to learn the color, you know, how to paint color, or go back into black and white and just paint that way. Mirage says, oh good, but I suck pretty bad in black and white, but I'll give it a try. I just like colors so much. Oh, I totally understand you. Yeah, I mean, I was totally the same. Like every time I work in black and white, I just feels like it's kind of boring. But if you can actually fall in love with painting in black and white, then when you add the color, it's that much more fun, because you know, you actually can understand the thing. So you know what, you can actually go back to what I said about the still lives. I feel like that's the solution for you. Actually do a lot more still lives, and you know, do a lot more studies and stuff, just to understand how color works, and then you can actually apply it. So hopefully that helps. Oh yeah, and then bro, I like how I said is, if I'm already finished, I have other things to talk about. So break down the hair. You know, I've talked about this before, is when you're painting hair, especially in this artwork, don't just paint hair like that, right? Oh, she said nose is my weak paint. Yeah, my weak point. Yeah, I can tell. Actually, I wrote it down here. Nose structure. So actually, if you have a weak point like that with features, and for me it used to be mouth, actually go in and write in planes of the head. That's the first thing you need to study. So you study planes of the head, and look at how the nose is broken down, right? So you can actually learn every single plane in here from the planes of the head, and actually study it and paint. But I think there's like apps that allow you to turn around the plane of the head. So I want you to do a lot of exercises just painting the planes of the head from a different angle. And then when you're done with that, you can actually type in just nose. I don't know what's gonna come out. Yeah, so there's gonna be different types of noses, so you can actually just study it by itself, right? That's a great exercise to do. You just get a lot of noses and just, but you need to be learning. That's a great. She says, okay, I will. Thank you a lot. Yeah, you're welcome. That it's really important though, to learn about the planes of the head before you get into these exercises, because the thing is, when you're a beginner, you think you know how to draw a nose, right? So when you're a beginner, you're like, oh, okay, so I always draw a nose like that, you know. And you can kind of see it in the other girl work I have is Lucia, right? So she has a beautiful kind of developed style already, but she pretty much draws the same nose in every artwork. And I mean, pretty much every artist, you know, has that problem. But if you're a beginner and you haven't done any studies or you know, kind of like a lot more studying of anatomy, you're always gonna fall into this trap of thinking that you know how to draw a nose, so you pretty much just draw the same nose, and you actually refrain from studying it, you know. So that's why I advise you to go in and study the planes of the head, and then when you study the planes of the head, you can actually be like, oh, I understand the planes. So you go into the noses, and it's pretty much the same as the head, you know. You can actually go on top of this nose and pretty much just lower the opacity. You can actually go on top of the reference and break down the planes there, and then try to draw it by itself. So that's a thing that I feel like a lot of beginners don't do, is they don't think in planes. You know, planes are the most important thing that there is in painting, because everything is structure, right? So you can actually understand. And by the way, look at how when you're breaking down things in planes, you're not just drawing the nose like, okay, so a nose is a wing and a nostril, you know. Notice how I'm not just thinking about this nostril as a nostril, I'm thinking about planes of the nose. So this is actually not just gonna be like a simple curve in here and then okay, it's a nostril, but this actually here is gonna be, this curve is a part of planes. So actually this curve is made by this plane, and then you have another plane, then you have another plane. So actually the nostril is a combination of all these planes touching together, right? So if you can actually understand that and draw it, your noses are gonna look a lot more realistic. And I know why you draw noses like that, because you kind of get you know, you kind of fall into the trap of looking at a lot of stylized paintings. You know, you see professionals, you know, even I do it in my stylized style, which is pretty much just drawing like two simple nostrils, and you're like, okay, so that's a nose. But what you don't realize is that professional artists spend years and years understanding, you know, nose anatomy. So if you look at one of the best, like Ilya Kushinov, that guy understands a nose so fucking good that he can actually draw a nose with like 2 lines, you know. Look at that, look at that. I swear, that's literally 2 lines, and that looks fucking great, right? Because he spends so much time drawing noses. Look at that. He just drew like 2 simple nostrils, but it looks correct because he understands the structure. So don't fall into the trap of trying to copy these professional stylized artists, because you need to go through the process of understanding the structure, right? So I hope that makes sense. DJ says, I know you kind of mock style, but like all my presentable art is somewhat stylized. I'm now locked in that style, and expanding is big trouble for me right now. So you alright with looking at the same art style for criticism? Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem that a lot of beginners have, and that's why I want you to. That's why I really want you to break down the planes and all of that stuff, because I want you to really stay away from that problem. And luckily, I never really fell into that, because I was so much into realistic painting back in the day. So I first learned how to draw a realistic portrait. And if you actually fall into the trap of doing like a stylized painting, you need to go back. Like you need to go back and study the anatomy and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Like you can send me your artwork. I'm gonna critique the fuck out of you and make you feel bad, you know, and then you can actually go back and study that shit. Mirage says, I try to combine semi-realistic with a comic book style. I'm totally into this, but as you said, I need to first learn to break down the first thing before I develop this style. Yeah, that's definitely what I meant. So this problem that you have with the noses, it's not gonna solve by itself, you know. And that's why I don't really believe in this whole term just practice, you know, because if you think just practice, you're gonna draw the same nose. Look at that nose. It's pretty much the same broken nose in here that you have in here. You're gonna draw that same nose 100 fucking times, and it's not gonna improve one bit. Like your actual lines may improve, you know, you actually may draw more beautiful lines, you know, because your hand is getting better, but you don't realize that you don't understand the structure there, right? So that's why you need to do a lot of studies like that, you know, and just breaking down things, you know. So download the planes of the head, draw a lot from that, and then get references. And whether it's the head or even features, treat it the same way, you know, just lower the opacity, study the plane, you know. Actually, there's another plane here. Then hide that, you know, bring up the opacity and try to do the same sketch, right? So you're doing the same sketch and you're trying to remember those same lines. And by the way, while you're breaking down the planes, you need to have the planes of the head open up, right? So you open up the planes of the head. Where do I have them? So you have it over here. You're looking at the planes of the head, right? You're looking at it, and then you're breaking it down, and then you hide everything and you try to do it from your memory, right? So you go in with to the side and you try to break down the nose, and you're like, oh wow, I don't really realize where those planes are, you know? So you need to understand that there's gonna be a plane in here and a plane in there, right? And then you put it to side and you're like, oh, I totally forgot about this plane, you know? Right? So you put it to the side and you're like, there's supposed to be a plane in here, right? So that's a great practice, you know, when you have problems with like different types of features. DJ says, okay then, and he has this emoji. Man, just send me your artwork. Don't be a little bitch. I'm gonna help you, man. Mirage says, you know, I don't mind your critique. I think it's pretty cool and thank you. But you know, I just don't know if I can improve. Oh, of course you can improve, baby. Don't feel bad. Everybody can improve, man. Like, listen, like, it's just gonna take time. Like, this, I've talked about this before. When you're painting, I think this only happens in painting. Like anything else, whatever other skill you have, you know, even in the gym, you go into the gym, you train, your muscles become bigger when you train. But with painting, there's actually a delay, right? So with painting, because your eye gets much better much faster than your hand, you can actually spot a lot of your mistakes before you can actually redo them, right? So you spot a lot of your art and you're like, oh my god, my art looks shitty, but you don't know how to solve it. So you actually need to push through that, and it's gonna take, you know, at least 3-4 months. Like, you gotta be thinking in months and years. Like, I love when people are like, oh my god, I need to learn how to paint in 2 months. Like, I've been hardcore painting since 2013, you know? That's 6 fucking years, you know? Like, think about where, and I mean, you guys are pretty good, you know? I was this good at, you know, let's say 2015 or something. So you got to be thinking that's 4 years. You know, you're going to be on my level in 4 years. Hopefully with my help, you're going to be there in like 2-3 years. But it's still like, you know, 1 or 2 years. You know, you can't be thinking in days or months. You know what I'm saying? So don't get discouraged, you know. And if you do get discouraged, you can ask me a question, and, you know, I can kind of give you my fake inspiration and motivation. But really, it's about you motivating yourself and, you know, really falling in love with the process. Like, I know this looks boring, you know, with breaking down the planes, but when you actually do it, you realize how you get better, and you just fall in love with the process, you know? Like, at first it looks boring because you've never done it. And that's pretty much me, by the way. Oh, that's so good I mentioned that. Oh, I'm really on my philosophy rant right now. Okay, so that's a great fucking point. So the problem is, I had the same problem with teaching. Like, if you look at my YouTube channel, I used to talk really, I mean, I still talk about my dick, but I really used to talk about my life and all this shit. And I used to think that teaching about painting and helping people is lame as shit. Like, I thought having a mentorship, fuck that. Like, I don't want to teach anybody how to paint. Like, I got stuff to talk about, like fucking women and shit, you know? And then I realized I've never actually taught somebody how to paint. You know, I've never actually, you know, talked about art. And now that I'm talking about art, I realize how fun it is, you know, because I've done it for so long. I actually have all this knowledge. I just have to share it. And as I'm talking, I'm actually getting better. You know, you can see, like, my live stream right now is pretty shitty, but it was even shittier like 2 months ago, right? But because I saw that I'm getting better, you know, with teaching itself, I kind of fell in love with it, you know. Right now, I love talking to students, answering questions, like helping you guys. You know, it's the most fun I've ever had. Like, it's much, you know, I'm having a lot more fun with it than I used to have with me talking about my life and shit, you know, because you're actually giving value. But, you know, I didn't know that before I started doing it. So you shouldn't get discouraged about something that you've never done. So if you've never actually done anatomy drawings, and guess what, it's gonna be super hard at first. Like, teaching, like, I've been live streaming for like the past half of a year, and it's still super hard. Like, I still get nervous, you know. I I still mistake my words. I still do all these stupid mistakes, but it doesn't matter. It's about you doing it and then getting a little better and then getting a little bit better. And then all of a sudden you're a lot better and everybody's like, wow, how did you do it? You must be so talented. And it's like, nah, motherfucker, you didn't see all of the live streams that I was talking by myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's all about you just doing it and getting 1% better. Okay, that was a long ass rant. I'm sorry. I hope that was helpful though. DJ says, you still have the problem of sorority. What's sorority though? Is that the thing that like girls go to? Sorority? It sounds kind of dirty. It sounds like a sex word. A society for female students in a university or college. Oh shit, that's funny. I've never been to college actually, but yeah. I mean, I find girls other ways though. By paying them. No, not by paying them. Okay, I got way too spoiled. Let me get back to painting though. Mirage says, no, it's fine. I will do my best to improve more so you'll be proud. Oh, I'm so happy, man. And I want to be that guy for you over here who really just gets you through the process and tells you, you know, just guides you, you know, because painting, I really believe in this whole idea that you can get you can be self-taught. You know, I'm completely self-taught. I've had some mentors kind of show me, you know, oh, you're doing this wrong, but it was pretty much me sitting here in this room teaching myself. And I really believe you can do that. You know, it's only about you just kind of knowing what way to go. And, you know, kind of like with you doing the stylized paintings, like if you do these nose over and over again, no matter how much you teach yourself, you're still gonna have the same shitty nose, right? So you actually need to do the exercise. DJ says, me big dumb. I mean, like learning from other people through your teaching people. Yeah, I definitely have that. Like I've really learned myself I've really taught myself a lot of things while teaching other people, you know, like I didn't, like you can ask my students, like I didn't know how to teach like anything. Like I was really like sitting there like, you need to draw like that, you know, like I didn't know how to, you know, break down stuff. But you know, it's only getting better. But that was my point though. Like you don't know how to get better if you're actually not getting better. Does that make sense? Like I feel like a lot of people were trying to figure it all out before they even start. Like that was pretty much me with teaching. I was like, man, I'm just gonna create a course, and I was already thinking about how am I gonna market this course. But then I didn't think about the fact that I've never actually taught somebody anything. So you need to go through the process of learning it in order to realize some of the things that you can actually apply. Mirage says, I appreciate you took the time. Thank you a lot. Oh, you're welcome, baby. You're welcome. So anyway, it's been an hour, but I still wanted to mention kind of like some things because I still haven't gave a critique to Lucia. So this is gonna be a kind of a longer live stream, but I kind of got into some rants. Sorry guys. So here is Lucia's work, and she kind of has a similar problems to Mirage. So a couple of the things that I already mentioned for Mirage are gonna apply for Lucia, but I feel like she has. Hey, and by the way, I forgot to mention, you Mirage, you're drawing way too many eyelashes. So that's a thing I feel like a lot of beginners, you know, even light eyelashes themselves have structure and have planes, you know. So even when you're painting stuff like eyelashes, you shouldn't be painting them like that, right? It shouldn't be like that. You should actually cluster them and actually paint them. What's happening though? I think my computer is getting way too buggy though. Oh shit, it says consider turning down. Okay, I don't know what's happening. Let me just close some things. So I'm gonna close this. Oh, it's really laggy though. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to paint. I hope you can still hear me on YouTube, by the way. Oh, that's great. Now I can touch anything. Okay, we're back. Okay, let me close this. Let me just leave Joshua and Lucia. Okay, so I won't be able to paint, but God knows I don't really have time to do that anyway. So I'm just gonna rant. Lucia, she's doing great with color. On the other hand, like her color is beautiful. Like you can kind of see how she has these beautiful. By the way, those are some draw this in your challenges from my page. Dude, what's happening? Why is it so laggy? Those are some of the draw this in your challenges that I have draw this in your style challenges. This one is from Lord Grizz, and she actually has a beautiful sense of color. So I don't feel like the really color is a problem for her. I feel like it's more about structure and just getting different types of features, right? So Lucia is even deeper into, oh, DJ says I hear everything just display, capture, and camera. What does that mean though? Okay, I hope everything works, man. Anyway, Lucia is getting deeper into finding her art style, but I feel like if she doesn't get more into the structure, she's actually gonna fall into that just trap of drawing the same face over and over again. I mean, again, all artists have that, but you really should be fighting with it. You know, you constantly should be fighting yourself with making different types of artwork. So that's why I even started, you know, creating different types. Oh, everything is fucking laggy. I can't even open up. Okay, that's why I started fighting with myself of creating different types of styles. You know, because I want to push myself to draw completely different eyes, completely different noses, because it's really like a disease. Like the more you paint, the more you fall into this trap, right? So that's why I do as much as possible. I'm constantly doing different types of studies, and I'll actually advise you to do that as well, because you can fall into that trap of you just painting the same eyes and noses. Mirage says, but there is a reason why I draw so many. Please don't be mad because I never had so many eyelashes, so I'm gonna give them to my girls. This is such a cool style though. Yeah, I get you with the eyelashes. I just feel like it's gonna look better if you actually kind of capture them more into one big eyelash and you just add a little bit. Yeah, Lucia's style is great. Does she has an Instagram account? Yeah, I think it's that Sweet as Pins. I mean, she's pretty good, don't get me wrong, she's great. I just feel like if she wants to get into the next level, wait, why is it so zoomed in though? She's doing amazing, but I just feel like if she wants to get into that next level, she really needs to focus a little bit more on the structure, and kind of like the same exercises that I gave to Mirage is really just breaking stuff down in 3D. Because you know, you're doing great with the eyes, but if you look at that eye and that eye and that nose and that nose, it's pretty much the same, right? So you've actually developed that sense of a style before you actually develop the difference in drawing different types of features. Okay, I'm getting tired at this point. Another thing that I mentioned is the rim light that I wrote down is rim light. So when you're painting rim light, guys, you really need to be thinking about the structure again and the form of, you know, whether it's a face or whether it's an arm. You don't paint rim light just kind of like an out edge, you know. You need to be thinking about, is this rim light gonna hit a lot more on the top, or is it gonna hit a lot more on the bottom, right? So look at how much more 3D that's gonna look if you actually add, you know, that's the rim light is pretty much light that's coming from the back but also kind of to the side. So one type of rim light is not going to be able to have light on the top, on the bottom, on the side. Like, it's only going to be a couple of places, right? So if you can kind of have it right here, it's not going to be in here with the chin, right? So that's kind of like one of the things I'll kind of advise you. And by the way, another thing is try to break it down in with the things that you're painting. So if you have the rim light in here, it's actually gonna go, you know, more to the side because it's hitting this the clothing in here. And look how much more 3D that looks. Look at the before and an after, you know. It actually looks like there's a cloth here. So that's pretty much my critique, is think about the structure, right? You have the rim light kind of going in here. So that's the before and after with just a couple of brush strokes, you know. Don't add it everywhere, you know. Add it in a couple of key places, but make sure you add, you know, think about the structure again. So yeah, that's it for Lucia. What else did I say? Yeah, study to make different features. I mentioned that. She actually has this beautiful artwork. It's done with pastel, and she mentioned that. I feel like the nose is a little bit too big. I can't really give you a lot of critiques. Oh, by the way, dude, I was gonna forget. I have this other Patreon that I didn't talk about. Oh, I have Rose, man. I totally forgot about Rose. I'm sorry, Rose. Rose actually sent me some artworks, but I forgot because they was in watercolor. Oh shit, I totally forgot about you, Rose. I'm sorry, I'm gonna talk about it now. So, Rose actually sent me her artworks in watercolor, and they're really beautiful. Unfortunately, I've never really worked in watercolor, so I can't really give you advice on that. But hopefully, in the future, I'm gonna work and get more experience with watercolor, so I can start teaching you guys about that as well. But just in general, I really like this artwork. I feel like this one can kind of have more of a focal point. Like that's a thing when you're drawing, you know, landscapes or illustrations, you really need like a focal point to look at. So the idea of having like mountains and skies and clouds is great, but what am I looking at exactly, you know? Like for example, you can add just like a sun with like a reflective light, or like maybe a little building in here that you can actually capture the eye's attention. And I constantly do that in my work. If you look at it, you know, for example, I even though I'm working from a reference, I'll still add all of these little characters and stuff, you know. I'll still be adding, you know, for example, this, like, it didn't really have the characters in here, and that's a great thing to do when you're doing landscapes. You just add little big characters just to kind of get your eye going in different places, you know. And it kind of, you already, you know, build up a story in your head, like what are these, you know, little figures doing in here. And it's the same for this one. Like I pretty much used the reference for the background, and I just added a character just to, and it adds so much more mood, you know, because you can, well, the thing about humans is when they look at a character, they really picture themselves being there, right? But they see themselves as the character, and it's just kind of like a trippy thing. So I always have characters in my landscapes. It's very rare for me to draw a landscape without a character. So that's kind of like one critique I have for you, Rose. This one is beautiful. A critique for this one, I feel like you can actually make the composition not so, what was the word? Not so symmetrical, right? So when you're adding an interesting composition, it's never gonna be completely symmetrical. You know, you can kind of see how even the angles, even the colors are completely symmetrical. So maybe if you added the sun to the side, or you added the, what was that animal called though? The doves, whatever it's called. You can actually add the doves to the side a little bit. It's about you making a more of an interesting composition. But it kind of goes to the painting technique. Again, I've never really used watercolor, so I can't give you that. But yeah, work a little bit more on composition and a little bit more on focal points. So I hope that helps. And finally, my boy Joshua. I'm sorry, man. I always leave you for last. I'm sorry. But you know, we're gonna be talking on Skype though next week. So just real fast, I wanted to kind of talk about his artwork over here. He's definitely getting better, man. He's getting so much more into structure, so much more into edges. Kind of just wanted to talk about some of the things I wrote. So great structure. The first thing I noticed in this artwork is, dude, why is everything so laggy? The computer can't handle the awesomeness. That's what it is. I know it's that. So anyway, hopefully you're gonna hear me though. It says encoding overload, consider turning down. Bitch, I'm not turning down. I've been live streaming for an hour and a half. There's no turning back. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned in this artwork is that the eyes are in the wrong direction. So in the reference, actually she's looking at you, and Joshua made her look like somewhere else. Which it doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really matter if you're only looking at the painting. But the thing about a study is for you to study everything, right? So you might as well have painted the eyes looking, you know, like she looks towards you. And that's something that I've talked about before. The secret to making an eye look somewhere is not only in the iris itself. So if you look at the iris, it's not only the position of the iris that makes you look like she's looking at you, but it's also the eyelids, right? So the thing about eyelids is that they're gonna move as the eye moves. So imagine if this is the bow of the eye, right? So if you have the bow in the eye, the eyelid is gonna be like that. Then you have the same bow, because the thing about bows is that they don't change anything when they're moving in 3D space. Like a bow is always gonna be a bow in 3D space, right? It doesn't really change anything. But the eyelid itself is gonna be changed, right? So if the eye is looking at you, the eyelid is gonna be like that. It's gonna be like bam, bam, bam. But if the eye is looking to the side, look at what happens. Why can't I paint though? Oh, it lags again. Looking great. So if the eye is looking to the side, actually this eyelid is gonna be a lot longer than this one. So actually the eye itself, the bow itself is not gonna change, but the eyelid is gonna change. So look at how this eye looks like it's actually looking there. And I didn't do that I didn't do that with the iris. You know, I completely did that with the eyelid. So that's why it's really important for you to actually study the eyelids. So that's the mistake that Joshua did, is he made the eyelids, this eyelid, he made it look like actually she's looking that way because he made this eyelid way too big, way too long actually. So look at, if you look at the original reference, look at how, you know, the eyelid is pretty much 3 pieces. So it's like 1, 2, 3, right? And if the eye is straight up looking at you, this piece, and kind of depends on the gender and the race of the person, but this eyelid is gonna be the same as this one, right? But if the eye is kind of moved, you can kind of notice how this one is actually gonna be a lot shorter than this one, right? So that's one thing that you can see from this reference. Look at how short this one is compared to this, right? And then if you look at Joshua's, actually this eyelid is the same length as this one. So that's why it makes it look like she's looking that way, you know. And I mentioned that if you look, make them look the same size, it's gonna make it look like she's looking at you. But when they're the same size, it's gonna make it look like she's looking at the same place that the head is turned. So because her head is actually turned a little bit to that way, because they're the same size, it's gonna make the eye look like it's looking that way. So because her head is a little bit turned that way, actually this eyelid is gonna become smaller than this one. So I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit scientific, but you know, as you're kind of studying more and more, you're gonna notice, you know, the differences in eyelids. So I hope that helps with the direction of the eyes. Another thing, hair local color is too dark. So the thing about local color, you know, when you have a white object, you know, let's say you have a white object and then you have a darker one in here right next to it. So if you have these two objects and then you have the same type of light, let me open up color dodge, actually no, overlay. So you have overlay kind of hitting these two spheres. You can notice how these two spheres, the light of the sphere, the white in the white is gonna be a lot wider than this white, you know, the white of the blacker the darker bowl, right? So does that make sense? So when you have a darker object and it's hit by light, it's not gonna be the same white light, I mean, I always confuse that, the same light as the lighter light. Okay, I'm way too tired to explain this, but pretty much you drew the hair too dark. That's a long story short. Because the hair is wider, you actually need to paint the local color of the hair a lot wider. So let me show you, if you add a little bit of overlay in here, how it's gonna make it look like she's having a wider hair. It's gonna make it look much better. So look at that. That's just one overlay, right? So you gotta be thinking about the local color before you add the shadows and the lights. So because her hair is white, it's actually, everything in the hair is gonna be lighter than the face, you know, because it's white, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Next thing, hair like a wig. Oh yeah. Because you didn't make the transition over here, it kind of makes it look like she's wearing a wig. Because the thing about wigs is that it doesn't seem like a natural transition right here into the scalp. And I mean, I'm the guilty one, because I always kind of criticize Joshua that he's kind of doing this thing, you know, which looks ugly as fuck. So maybe that's why he stopped doing it. But you gotta find a balance. You can't just paint the scalp going into the hair like that, but you can also paint it kind of like, you know, without any transition. So the secret is use a big brush, right? So when you're painting the scalp and the hair, you need to be using a big brush and make it look like there's pieces of hair that actually are going into the scalp, without you painting those little hairs. So if you go in, you can actually paint a little bit of hair, you know, in the end, but it's pretty much you just kind of drawing the same structure, kind of going into the hair, right? And that's gonna make it look a lot more natural. Then has neck too thick. Yeah, that's another thing. Her neck is way too thick, so let me merge everything just to kind of show you. So if you notice, and by the way, it's not only for the neck, I can see kind of in the nose and everything. The thing about females, and that's why I want you to study first males, the thing about males is they have a lot more structure than females. So when you study males, you can actually study a lot more on the structure, because females are more feminine and everything is softer and everything is a lot smaller and everything is way more curvy, right? But because he's been studying males for so long, or maybe he just didn't notice, you can see how the neck actually has the a little bit of a curve, right? So the neck is not straight the way you painted it, and it's the same for the nose. Look at how feminine that nose is. Look at how masculine Joshua painted it, right? So the nose, especially, and the neck need to be a lot thinner and a lot more feminine. And the way to do that is actually made, just kind of bring them closer and make it with a curve, right? So if you have something, the way to make it look thin is not only to just thin it out, but also make it curved, right? So if you make something curved and thin, it looks like it's actually getting even more, it's actually getting thinner, right? That's pretty much what I do for the neck. Look at that. That's before and after the liquefy, and that's before and after the merging. And I'll do the same for the nose, right? So I'll bring the nose closer and actually have a little bit of a curve into the nose. So the nose used to be super straight. Like, look at how great, it fucking lags again. If you look at the nose, look at how straight it is. Like, it's pretty much like bam, bam, bam. And then in the reference, even though it looks straight, actually this one, look at how kind of it's going in some direction, and it has a little bit of a curve to it. You know, it's not the way you painted it. It's not completely straight. So hopefully that helps as well. Nose too big, male features, explain female chin and cheekbone. Yeah, that's another thing, is the same goes for the cheekbone. So the cheekbone itself is gonna be a lot curver, right? So you actually painted it the way a 40-year-old man is gonna have a chin, which is you going with the curves that way. You know, it's kind of like a curve that way, and you're going with a curve that way. I mean, this one is kind of going like that, but notice how this curve, and I know it's a really small thing, but I swear it makes such a big difference. Wait, if Photoshop will work, I'm gonna show you. Okay. So if you notice this cheekbone over here, it's actually almost curved the other way. It's almost like that because it's so feminine that it's actually a lot thinner. You know, it's not like the male ones, which are more bulgier and have a lot more structure to them, right? So the thing about females, you need to make everything a lot more curvy, everything a lot more feminine, you know. So stay away from those structural kind of drawings, and just basically, let me show you what was gonna happen if I liquefy his face. If you bring everything closer to each other, like basically the cheeks, you know, the mouth, the nose, make everything smaller and just a lot more feminine, it's actually gonna look like her a lot more. And that has nothing to do, by the way, with style or realism. That's pretty much just, you know, femininity. You know, it's the thing about style is when you're working in a stylized painting, I'm not saying you should do that because you're studying realism right now, but the thing about style is you just push that even more. You know, like an anime girl is pretty much like a normal girl with everything pushed a lot more. So her nose, so you know, her eyes are gonna be super big, but her nose is actually gonna be smaller, right? So it's actually gonna make her look more like a female. So that's pretty much the critique for this artwork. Let me show you the before and after. Wait, I'm just gonna copy that. Oh, fuck. So that's That's how you make her look a lot more feminine. Actually, I make her look like she has a boxer nose. I make her nose look like she's fucking broken in places. Come on, Photoshop, work for me, baby. Come on, last minute. I'm gonna leave you alone. Actually, probably not because I have stuff to paint. Okay. So actually, I made the nose look terrible. Okay, I can't fix it. Whatever, man. Come on. And whatever. Great, now I can't even close it. Anyway, this is it for today, man. Thank you so much to everybody. I hope it was a useful stream. I kind of got nervous at places again, but I'm sorry. I'm gonna get better, I promise. I really appreciate you, everybody, man. Holy fuck, I have 4 people watching me after an hour and a half. I really appreciate you guys, man. Make sure you send me your work for a critique next week. Do everything I said I did. I don't remember what I said, but it was probably right. You know, I wish you all the best. Keep hustling, keep getting better, and I'm gonna talk to you next week, man. Peace, bitch.